This week's Parasha, Parashat Nitzavim, always falls out the Shabbat before Rosh Hashana. Sometimes it's Nitzavim Vayelech, but in a year like this, it's just Nitzavim. It's obviously very special that this Parasha, which deals with the mitzvah of Teshuva, should always fall out with our fixed cycle the week before Rosh Hashana. We know that after all was said and done in last week's Parasha with the Tochacha, that we're told in this week's Parasha, once all has been said and done, the blessings and the curses have all come upon you. That will take to heart everything that's happened. That we will return ad Hashem Elokecha, we will return up to Hashem. This is obviously the mitzvah of Teshuva. And this is clear, the root, in fact, Teshuva, Lashuv, appears no less than 7 times throughout this passage in our Parasha. And we have here essentially the mitzvah of Teshuva. The mitzvah of Teshuva is also a very powerful one as it's presented in our Parasha. And we know that in the little Parasha that appears immediately after the passage I just read, there's a question of what exactly ki ha-mitzvah hazot is referring to. What is this mitzvah which is lo BaShamayim which is lo me'ever layam? And we know that Chazal in the Midrash explains that it's referring to ha-mitzvah hazot, the entire corpus of all the mitzvot of Torah. But the Ramban and others in his wake say that ha-mitzvah hazot, this mitzvah which is lo BaShamayim and lo me'ever layam, is in fact referring to the mitzvah of Teshuva in the immediate preceding Parashia. When we think about the idea of Teshuva, Rambam seems to have 2 models in terms of what the purpose of Teshuva is. When we open the Hilchot Teshuva of the Rambam, we see that quite clearly in Perek Aleph of Hilchot Teshuva, the Rambam explains and expresses the idea of Teshuva as being something where we have to do vidoi before Hashem. And Kates and Midvadin, how is it that we do Teshuva? Says the Rambam in Hilchot Teshuva Perek Aleph, Omer, Ana Hashem chatati aviti peshati lefanecha v'asiti kach v'kach. I did such and such a sin. V'harei nechamti or voshti b'ma'asai le'olam eini chozel le'davar zeh. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I will never return to such a thing. V'zehu ikaro shel vidui. In the opening chapters of Hilchot Teshuva, we know that the Rambam explains Amidah lifnei Hashem, standing before Hashem in Teshuva, as a means to an end. When it comes to Teshuva, we stand before Hashem in the vidui process in order to achieve a goal, which is to attain Teshuva, to check the box, or as we say in Hebrew, l'samen vi. When it comes to the later prakim of Hilchot Teshuva, however, it seems that there's a different aim, that Amidah lifnei Hashem is not a means to an end, but rather is the end in and of itself. When we look in Perek Zayin of Hilchot Teshuva, Rambam talks about the virtues of Teshuva. He says, Gedola Teshuva shemakarevet et ha'adam lashchina. Teshuva is great, it brings man before the Shechina. Shneimar, as it says, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. V'neimar lo shavtem adai ne'um Hashem. The idea that returning ad Hashem, to Hashem, perhaps similarly echoed in our Parasha, the idea of v'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, that the idea of returning to Hashem is not just a means to an end, it's not just Amidah lifnei Hashem as a means to achieve, to attain Teshuva, but rather shavta ad Hashem, returning to Hashem, is the end in and of itself. So we have Amidah lifnei Hashem at this time of year, on the one hand, as both a means to achieving Teshuva, but also as the end goal of Amidah lifnei Hashem, v'shavta ad Hashem Elokecha, in and of itself. Teshuva is something which is both the means and the end. And when we think about the words in the following Parashia, as explained by Ramban, that the ha-mitzvah hazot is lo nifleti mimcha v'lo rachakahi, it's not beyond us. We often tend to explain this to mean that it's impossible. We shouldn't say that it's impossible. Lo BaShamayim hi le'mor mi aleinu ha'shamayim v'kacheh halanu. It's not beyond us. It's not in heaven to say who could possibly get it for us. V'lo me'ever layam hi. And it's not overseas such that we should say le'mor mi ya'avor lanu el ever hayam v'kacheh halanu. Who could possibly go overseas? But rather, karov elecha davar ma'od. It's very close to us. B'ficha u'b'vcha la'asoto. It's in our mouths and our hearts to simply do it. And oftentimes, and traditionally, we explain this idea, lo BaShamayim v'lo me'ever layam, to mean it's just simply not true that it's impossible. It's not unfathomable and unattainable. It's right there and we're able to do it. But I think perhaps if we look at these psukim, perhaps there's a different way to understand it. We're not saying, and the Torah is not telling us it's not impossible, but rather the focus has to be something different. When we say, Lo BaShamayim hi le'mor mi ya'aleh lanu ha'shamayim v'yikacheh halanu v'yashmi'enu ata v'na'asena, Maybe what we're saying, in fact, is you might have thought that Teshuva is just a technicality which is preventing us from doing it. The same way that if it were in heaven, we simply would say, Le'mar, we would ask, Mi ya'aleh lanu hashmayim v'yikacheha lanu. Who can go up to heaven and just simply take it for us? V'yashme'enu ata v'na'asena. Then we'll teach it to us and we can do it. And the same thing if it's me'ever layan, if it's overseas. Lo me'ever layam hi le'mar mi ya'avar lanu et lo yaver hayan v'yikacheha lanu. It's not above and beyond to say who could go above and take it for us. And all they have to do is bring it to us and we'll do it. But rather that's not true. That it's close to you, it's in your mouths and it's in your heart, and it's simply in front of us to do it. I think the second understanding would say, it's not that we're saying it's impossible. It's not impossible, but simply for us to do. But rather, it's not a technicality which is preventing us from doing it. It's not just a matter of distance. And it's simply, if somebody would only bring it for us, then, in truth, we'll listen, we'll do it. And if it was overseas, if only someone would bring it, again, they'd put it before us, we'll do it. Time is over for excuses, the Torah is telling us. It's very close. It's so close, it's in our very hearts and in our mouths. There's no technicality of simply somebody will bring it for me and then I'll happily do it. But rather, karov ma'od. It's terribly close to us. In fact, it's in our hearts. When we think about how we opened with the opening psukim about Teshuva, we read about how everything is said and done after the bracha and klala, v'hashevota elevavecha. We don't say v'shavta elevavecha. We don't return to look into our hearts, but v'hashevota elevavecha, in the hifil, in the causative. You'll restore to your hearts. We take all of our experiences, the bracha and klala, v'hashevota elevavecha, and we bring them back into our hearts. Everything we go through, everything we've been through as a nation, we take those things in our experiences and we restore them, v'hashevota, into our hearts. When we do that, v'shavta et Hashem elokecha, you will return up to Hashem, both as a means and an end, something which is very possible. It's karov elenu ma'od. It's incredibly close to us. The idea that when we think about things deeply and we realize there's no barrier, it's not a thing of distance overseas or in heavens, it's a mindset. Teshuva is a mindset and it's karov elenu ma'od. The challenge for us at this time of year is to take everything we've been through, to take our experiences, v'hashevota elevavenu, and to bring this into our own hearts in the hope that we will attain that Teshuva shalema, both as a means to achieve Teshuva, to stand before Hashem, but also as the end in of itself, v'shavta ad Hashem elokecha. Shabbat shalom.